sacred beings, God rising, that divine and infinite source of all creation that is constantly present within me, recognizes and appreciates that same divinity that is forever present and constantly flowing within you. Namaste. So this is a touchy subject, and I have my notes in front of me because, well, for one, it helps keep me on track, but it is also a very complex subject with so many different ways to address the multitude of factors that play into an individual dealing with mental illness. And although we are becoming more open about it, there's still a majority of people that choose to avoid that conversation out of fear of offending anyone. In that same respect, they don't talk about mental illness because they themselves have not personally dealt with it. Now, all I can do is talk about it from my experience and my understanding and how I defeated my mental illness for good. Now, something I should say is that this is what helped my experience. This won't work for everybody, obviously. But my hope is that it gives insight to others dealing with mental illness. So the inevitable fall of my mental illness led me to have the ability to express staying away from those labels and how they impose different characterizations. In other words, I did not want to be labeled or known as a depressive individual, an anxious individual, someone that suffers from severe anxieties, an individual that suffers from BPD. I didn't want to make that my identity. And once again, this realization, it came much after I got better. Much after I got better. I think it actually came in one of my highs outside of my lows, because when I'm in my lows, I'm not hearing it. You know, like, I think we can all relate to that. But I told myself that I no longer want to internalize that label to where it consumes my identity any longer. I didn't want those labels, or I didn't want a label on something that is simply human, part of the human experience. Now, there's a quote that I'm sure we've all heard of it. It says that hell isn't some place that we go, but it is something that we carry with us. Now, let's think about that. The same can be said for heaven, that heaven isn't necessarily a place that we go, but it is something that we embody and that we carry with us. So think of it this way. Your time on this realm can be a heaven on earth, or it can be a hell on earth. Whatever you affirm, whatever you give power to manifest and live by, it will be. And so it is. There's also another expression that there isn't an all-powerful cure for mental illness, more specifically depression. There isn't an all-powerful cure for depression. I'm here to tell you that from my understanding and my experience, that once again, much after I empowered myself, that saying is not true. And that you yourself solely is that all-powerful cure. It's not other people, of course, but you yourself is that all-powerful cure. Now, I know what some of you may be thinking. It's not that simple. And you're right. It takes work. It takes a lot of work. You may be thinking I'm wrong. You're insensitive. Possibly. my understanding, it's actually the contrary. I have dealt with mental illness severely. And of course, the thing that helped my experience was the physical self-care, like going to the gym, because it is a form of therapy. I was considered a gym rat. I was going 4 days a week, and it wasn't about muscle milk, steroids, like how much do you bench? It wasn't about all that. It was really just me wanting to better myself, better my physique for myself internally, nothing external. No external force wanted me to be more lean, be more cut, in other words. Of course, there's also the spiritual self-care, staying away from vices, drugs, alcohol, and reestablishing that connection with myself naturally by deep breathing and through meditation. Something I will say, for those of you that are dealing with severe anxiety, and I know this may sound cliche because I used to hate when people would tell me this, or not hate, I used to strongly dislike when people would tell me, just breathe. But I think the key is that you use these tools instead of allowing these tools to use you. Now, don't get me wrong, I wanted to operate more free. I didn't want to belittle any practice. Like, I guess you could say I was desperate for any tool, any key that I could use to better myself, instead of letting that tool use me. So if you're suffering from extreme and severe anxieties, something that I would recommend, that once again, it helped me in my experience and gave me better clarity, was deep breathing. And with that being said, the one thing, in addition to all the other forms of self-care, that helped aided my treatment, or I should say my cure, was and still is the mental self-care, that empowerment. And you can do that, sacred beings, by validating your own existence, validating your own power, and not letting family or friends dictate what you could or cannot be. In addition to that, what's also most important, there's so many keys and what's most important, but something that was also very crucial to my experience was that I stopped internalizing all those opinions and those expectations and allowing it to give me a complex that you could be this, you could be that, you should be this, you should be that. You can't amount to this level. You're too powerful, you're too wise, you're too inquisitive. You will amount to this. You should be this. I expect nothing less. I internalized, although it may be true, that was their truth. It wasn't something that was brought to my awareness or my truth. In other words, until I internalized it. And with me internalizing their truth, it also put so much unnecessary stress and pressure on myself. And I allowed it all those years, all my life, now that I think about it. And I eventually forgave myself for being suppressed or allowing others to suppress myself. And on a deeper level, I forgave myself for suppressing my highest form from operating at its truest nature, free. So after these routines of self-care, I stopped going long periods of days without bathing and showering or brushing brushing my teeth, washing my face, the basics. I stopped eating junk and draining foods. And I'm not saying that going vegetarian or the fairly extreme vegan lifestyle, because trust me, it's more than a diet, it really is a lifestyle, is the key to dealing with depression or anxiety. But being more mindful about the food that we eat and the level that we are eating these foods, eating in excess, in other words. Something that I still deal with is that I try my best to stay away from junk food and those draining foods, and I eat healthy. I tend to eat on the healthier side, but I still eat in excess. Like, I love food. And my excuse to my grandparents or my family members is that I have a fast metabolism. So I stopped doing all that, but I think what was really crucial, that initial first step that I took, this was the first step that I took, was that I empowered myself to stop hanging around draining individuals, family especially, friends included, but family especially, and not giving an excuse about it either. See, people that struggle with mental illness, we are sensitive. We are a sensitive group of people. And it is bad enough that these individuals beat themselves up on a subconscious and even on a conscious level, to the point that it could really make anyone question if they are really there for them, whether they have their best interests or not, or whether they are being manipulative and using them. And I'm sure that the last thing, mental illness or not, the last thing that anyone needs is an individual that can question their own sanity, even in their most sacred space. Now, I understand that with certain forms of mental illness, it is passed down through family lineage, and that we only have treatments and not cures available, to our understanding, because maybe there is a cure to it, but Big Pharma is keeping it very hush-hush to continue to make visually unfathomable profits off those that aren't so much helpless to their ailment, but self-victimize and internalize this ailment so much that they are now in a space that they feel the need to continue to feel helpless. Is it a conspiracy? Maybe. But maybe we should look at why these profit monster corporations could even consider doing something like that. In this current age, and I think probably as far back, older than me, sex sells. And unfortunately, mental illness sells as well. So we have celebrities that claim severe and even incurable forms of mental illness, all for the sake of making themselves more relatable to the public that already idolizes them. So when we have a generation looking up to these A and B list celebrities that claim these ailments, not only do they feel more connected psychologically, but now they will support them so much, even to the point of claiming it themselves. Wow, this person has depression. You know what? I have depression too. This person suffers from extreme social anxiety or extreme anxieties. Come to think of it, I do too. This person has bipolar disorder. I think I do too. So we are all human, and I don't know anything about these other individuals. I don't know anything about throughout their lives. But what I do know is that we are all human and that we react differently to the trials and tribulations of life. And the one thing that I believe that we can all collectively agree on is that suffering in silence is very detrimental and deteriorating, not so much to, or not only to the mental health, but the physical and the spiritual health as well, your being as a whole. So something that I've liked about, even with our celebrities, is that I appreciate that it helped create this culture to accept individuals with mental illness as humans, nonetheless, as if they were any less. But in turn, what I strongly disliked is that it also created a culture that it is almost cool to have one, and that when you have one, it makes you less susceptible to criticism. And it almost to the point to where those that suffer look down on others that don't suffer because they aren't as complex as the individual that suffers from it on a day-to-day basis. Simply because you don't struggle with it, you aren't as complex as me. So now I can act out this way or treat others this way because I suffer from this. It's just a pass. It's an excuse. Even as someone that once struggled with mental illness, I can only go so far talking about the complexities of it. But if I'm being honest, at this point, I'm doing the opposite of the purpose of this video, and I'm beginning to point the finger. So, in conclusion, sacred beings, the things that help me get over myself and empower myself by stepping into that high vibration was, of course, doing the physical and the spiritual work, but the mental work as well, to stop crucifying myself and reacting to these external forces and wrongly internalizing them. So your mind is your biggest enemy, but it is also your strongest and most valuable asset. And for those of you that are still caught in the mix and battling this relentless illness, something that I really want you to take in and understand is that you are powerful beyond words. You are not behind. You aren't ahead of yourself, and you are exactly where you need to be in this journey. You are a very light and sensitive being that is pure beauty. I see the beauty in you, and the strength and the potential that is sitting right underneath the surface within you. You are flourishing, and something that I know to be the truth is that you will not struggle any longer. Please continue to empower and liberate yourself for yourself. Be patient and consistent with yourself in breaking this very vicious cycle. Suicide is never, and I mean never, an option. You are too precious. You are too valuable. And you mean a great deal to this universe. This is a vast universe, but you are the universe and you are present within it. And that is so cool, and it's so beautiful, and it is called life. The footprint that you continue to mold and evolve on this realm will be one to remember and always cherish and these words, they don't even begin to scratch the surface of how beautiful and deep and unique that you truly are. And the last thing that I want to say is that I understand. Believe me, more than you know, I understand. My channel, myself personally, is always, always there for you, each and every one of you. I am here because I understand. That divine essence and that divine expression and that unconditional love that is constantly present within me recognizes and appreciates that same divinity that is forever present and constantly flowing within you. Namaste.